Welcome to the Best Self Podcast. Today, look at that face. We've got Beth Miller in the house. If you can't buy into that, you can't buy into anything. Beth is a CEO at Executive Velocity. She's a top talent and leadership advisor for her firm. And she's trusted for leadership, for learning how to coach, for teaching succession, and the list is a mile long. If you check her out on LinkedIn, you'll see that her resume is super positive and it's super big with success. So really excited to have you here, Beth.
Well, I'm excited to be here with you, Brad.
We are going to have a great conversation. I've been so excited ever since we booked this, just getting to follow you and check out. And you're also an author.
Yes, I am.
Really, really good read. Before we get going, I would like just to make sure we give a shout out to all of our listeners. We have 24 countries now, and we're in 230 cities. And what started out as just an educator trying to add value to others has kind of gotten big, and I'm super thankful for all of you for that. Beth, I was looking at a stat. I was reading a stat, and I can't remember. I wish I could cite it, but it was 78% of all workers that end up quitting for reasons that could have been preventable. I thought that was a pretty strong stat.
Yeah.
Any ideas as to what that is? Like, what's the cause of that?
Yeah. I think that most of the cause of that is poor leadership. People leave people. They don't leave companies. There's something that's broken in the relationship between the person and who they're reporting to. And from my experience, a lot of that has to do with the fact that managers are often promoted into a management position because they are an expert at something.
Yeah.
They're a high performer, and the company believes that because they're a high performer, they can be a leader. Not so much.
Right. People leave people, not positions. That is gold. That is really good. And you mentioned high performers, and people just assume that they're going to be great leaders. And that's such a great point, because I see it in every field. I'm sure you see it in the same thing, where just because you are smart or just because you have success in one position doesn't mean you're going to have success in a different position.
Exactly. I work with a lot of small, mid-sized companies, and I see that a lot where, the leader, the business owner, they want to promote their performers. They want to reward them for the great work that they've done. The problem is that high performers, that doesn't equate to high potential from a leadership perspective. In fact, I read, and I can't quote where I got this, but it was 1 out of 7 high performers show high potential behaviors.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's not, that's
low.
Yeah.
Wow. A great stat. That is, and it's not that these people aren't good at what they do. That's not their niche, right? There's tons of people that are really good at what they do, but not everyone's supposed to be a head coach, or not everyone's supposed to be a CEO, or, to find your lane and what you have a chance to be great at.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're all gunning for.
Yeah. And one of the things that happens is that when they promote these individuals, it's pretty clear shortly in that there's some sort of gap or gaps between what this person needs to be doing as a leader versus what they were doing as an individual contributor.
Right.
And oftentimes that's when I get called in.
Right.
The business owner is like, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. We need to fix this. I don't want to demote the person.
Right.
So what I'll do is I'll go in and do some assessments on leadership skills, not behaviors, and help build a development plan
Okay.
that will close some of the gaps.
Okay. So you attack the skill first as opposed to the behavior.
Yeah, because that's the easiest.
Okay.
Obviously, things like delegation.
Right.
Some of those high performers, they're experts in things, and learning how to delegate effectively is something that they've never done before.
Right.
Team building, another skill that can be learned. But then there's also the behaviors that I will work with them on as well. A lot of it encompasses emotional intelligence. And the difference between emotional intelligence and IQ, or the knowledge,
Right.
is that emotional intelligence you can improve on. You can improve your emotional intelligence. You can't improve IQ. You're born with it, and that's it.
Right.
So I work with them on determining what are those specific areas. Is it empathy? Is it
Right.
managing your emotions?
Right.
That they can improve on, that will help them be a better leader.
Yeah, that is strong. Yeah, it's funny you bring up empathy, because that's been kind of something that's speaking to me lately, and in terms of what a lot of people are missing, because most workers, these people that did get out, most of them are for different reasons, but everyone wants to feel valued. Everyone seems like wants to get recognized, and everyone wants the leader to be authentic.
Yes.
I feel like those all kind of tie into each other a little bit.
They do, and it's interesting you bring that up, because with the lockdown that we've been going through, and a big portion of the workers are working from home. They're not back in the workplace, and there was a study by DDI. They do a lot of coaching and training and assessing from a leadership perspective. They did a survey back maybe 2 months ago, so it was probably about 8 weeks into COVID.
Right.
They found that employee engagement had increased. Now so that's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
You think, wait a minute, these people are sitting at home. Why would they be more engaged? Well, the reason is that leaders have adapted. They have, all of a sudden, I shouldn't say all of them,
Right.
but they have shown a care for their employees. They realize that this is a big hardship for many. You've got parents who are making sure that their kids are being educated at home.
Yeah.
There are single moms. There's all different flavors of personal situations that are challenging when you're working from home. Leaders have stepped up, and in Zoom meetings, instead of a traditional meeting when you're sitting around the conference room and you're checking in of, hey, did you get this done?
Yeah.
Now it's, hey, how are you?
Right.
How can I help you? And then, did you get it done?
Right.
So there's been a shift, and employees have realized and noticed and there's been that empathy. There's been a creation of by leaders of that psychological safety of being able to open up to leaders and employees sharing their struggles.
Yeah, that is really strong. There's the there you are, and there's the here I am.
Yes.
So a lot of those leaders get caught up in their title, and really, I think I've heard you talk about this countless times in regards to my idea on being a leader is you're serving others.
Yeah.
Whereas the people that don't really get it, they see themselves as kind of on a different level and they serve them. You work for me as opposed to you work with me.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of along the lines of what you're saying.
Yeah, and I do see a shift there, especially with the younger leaders. There isn't that what I call the traditional command and control type of leadership. There is more, especially if you get to that younger generation, of that servant leadership
Mm-hmm.
that comes more naturally to them.
Mm.
The older leaders have had to learn how to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the topic of leadership, this is your thing. You're really good at it. I'd like to talk about that, but I was thinking to myself when I was preparing for this, how do you get someone, a lot of people have good ideas, but they have a hard time delivering them. So once a person's created these really good ideas, how do we deliver that content or, that process or that plan or whatever? How do you have any suggestions there?
So if you're talking about a leader helping somebody in the execution mode,
Mm-hmm.
it's really one of the key components is accountability, and having what is an accountable interaction. So you've got to be really clear of what you're expecting. I will tell you that many times I see leaders interacting with a team member, and I have no idea what they want from that person.
Right.
And there's such a pace, a really fast pace when you're working, that leaders don't slow down to confirm if that individual really understands what was just said.
Yeah.
So that echoing back of, gosh, I just explained something to you. There was a lot there. Can you share with me what you heard?
Right.
And that gives you the opportunity to course direct before they go down the wrong path.
Yeah.
So the clarity there first. Second, there is a specific date and time that's expected. Now, there's two approaches to that. One is if you're working with somebody who understands what needs to be done, they're not, somebody right out of college.
Right.
You ask them, unless it's like an emergency, right? But you ask them, when do you think you can have this to me? I will tell you, and this is delegation 101, where somebody will delegate and then they're complaining to me in a coaching conversation that so-and-so hasn't gotten something back to them. Well, I asked them a week ago, and my question to them is, well, what time frame did they give you? Well, they didn't. I said, well, that's your responsibility. Right. You need to get a specific date and time. That doesn't mean by end of day. It means by 5 p.m.
Right.
Right. It's a specific date and time. And if you're working like we're in different time zones.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember what happened when we were coordinating? You were Mountain Time and I was Eastern Time.
Yeah.
I didn't confirm with you the time, the actual time zone until later on, because I got an invite.
Right.
That was 2 hours different.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a great example.
Sure.
Of being really specific about the time. And then the other thing is that there's only one person that's accountable for something getting done. It's not a department. And if you hear we, that's not accountable. It's I. So it's having those accountable interactions that will help drive execution.
Right. That's gold. Yeah, we had an earlier in the year episode that was titled ASAP. Is it commitment or confusion? And it's confusion, and there's no specific time there. People always say, I'm going to get it done ASAP. Well,
Right.
when's ASAP?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not clear at all.
Right. Very
Yeah.
cool. I feel like you're reading my mind over here. I have all these things that are just, this is next, this is next. I can't wait to talk about this, and you're just crushing them one at a time.
Well, thank you.
Superwoman over there. So I heard a cool term, listening to, well, not cool term, but a term, haterade. You know, not Gatorade, but haterade.
Okay.
Because when you're a leader, there's lots of people drinking the haterade because you're going to have to make tough decisions.
Yes.
You can't keep everybody happy.
No.
What would be your advice to someone out there that's uncomfortable with haterade, uncomfortable with people not just because you don't want to surround yourself with yes guys, right?
No.
You want different perspectives. You want to bring in different ideas. That's how we get stronger.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of people that will avoid those kind of things. Like when they're hiring, they'll try to hire people that agree with them or hire people that aren't going to hate. How do you talk to someone on that topic?
Wow. Well, when you talk about hiring,
Yeah,
I would, and that's one of the things I help companies do is hire better, greater people.
Right.
Is that you've got to get really clear on what are those core competencies that your company has and that employees need to match with. So you look at the values of your organization, and then you match behaviors that support those values.
Right.
Right. As it gets to the kind of the haterade, if you can then consider, okay, what kind of behavior won't support haterade?
Right.
All right. So that's the person that's more, positive.
Right.
They're probably going to be more open to change. So there's more flexibility and adaptability.
Yeah.
And you build behavioral interviewing questions around those.
Yes.
So the first step is not to get haters on your team.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
Now you may inherit a team.
Yeah.
Where you're not able to pick and choose. Now, the haters could be considered difficult employees, and if there's specific behaviors that you identify that aren't positive, that aren't going to drive results, then it's a coaching moment.
Yeah.
It's time to sit down and have the conversation with them. It's not about them, it's about their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And get really specific about what you've observed. One of the tips that I always share with people I coach is start with, can I share an observation with you?
Yeah.
It gives, what you're doing is you're asking for permission to give feedback.
Right.
And I will tell you, more than 9 times out of 10, people are going to go, yeah, they want to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
And then because they have given you permission, their ears are more open to listening. But when you deliver it, you need to deliver with facts. And it needs to be behavior that's recently been observed. Don't sit there and, think that the behavior is going to go away, because what you're doing is you're just inviting more of it.
Yeah.
I would say that, depending on what the behavior is, you address it as quickly as possible. If it's something that, maybe the person's having a bad day, and that this is just something that is is not normal for them,
Right.
you let it slide. But if it's something that you see 2 or 3 times, that's when you step in.
Yeah.
If you see a theme.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you I mean, gosh, this is awesome stuff. Do you feel like, I mean, in most things in life, it feels like there was a domino effect. I mean, negativity generally is a learned behavior. Haterade is generally a learned behavior. Do you feel like some of these people that are negative, that are learned behavior peeps, do you feel like they could actually turn into a strength? I mean, they're clearly very strong-minded. I mean, they're generally, a lot of them are pretty confident. They haven't been good listeners to this point.
Right. You know, in certain situations, the naysayers can be. Especially if you're like doing brainstorming, and you want somebody on your team to challenge the ideas, right? But you don't want a bunch of naysayers.
Right.
You're never going to get to that next step from a brainstorming innovation standpoint.
Sure.
But they can be of value. Yes.
Okay. So you're really good at coaching others. That's kind of a broad learning skill, right? I mean, the thing I love about it is that I feel like just through our previous conversation, you're in a mental mapping, like you're into making people independent thinkers. How do you, and that kind of leads into succession, which we'll talk about next, because that's one of your passions. How do you create people that are going to mental map for themselves, that are going to be independent thinkers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I've never heard it actually described that way, as independent thinkers. So really, you know, coaching is, I think of coaching as asking questions and challenging self-limiting beliefs. People come into a coaching engagement because either they're stuck or they're a high potential being prepared for that next position.
Right.
The people that are stuck, there is some sort of blind spot that they have that has worked for them up until this point, but now it's become a challenge.
Yes.
And it's holding them back. So the question that I kind of start with is, you know, how do you think this behavior has impacted you in the past? You know, think about the relationships, etc. And how do you think it's going to impact you in the future if you don't change?
Right.
Now, there are some people that I've worked with that they don't really care.
Right.
Most of them have reached a point, they're very goal oriented, they're driven, and they are willing, once they realize that it's going to be a benefit to them, to change.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because that kind of leads us to succession. You're really passionate about succession. And the reason I asked that previous question is because if you're trying to develop leaders, they do have to have ideas, and they have to have spent time and thought, thinking about, like, putting themselves in someone else's shoes. And could you tell us, what is it about succession that makes you so passionate about it? And then kind of just run us through how you approach that whole topic. That's a lot.
I was going to say, do we have another hour? So in a nutshell, I can explain succession planning between 2 companies that I actually worked with. One and they were small businesses, less than 100 employees. One of them, the owner, had a very strong succession plan. And he had identified 3 years prior to when he wanted to retire who the individual was that was going to take his place. Plus, who the person was going to take that person's place. And also any of those other key leaders, who was he developing to step in. So that's basically, succession plan is about having the right people in the right place at the right time, doing the right things.
Yes.
So he had a plan and he executed to the plan. At the end, he had made himself replaceable. So when ADP came to him with a cash deal, no earnout, that's unusual.
Right.
Usually you get some money up front, and then you're locked into a 2 to 3 year contract, and then you get the remainder of your money at the end of that contract.
Sure.
He was able to walk away at the very beginning, and his successor was the one that ran the organization for ADP. The other person always said he had a plan. I never saw it.
Yeah.
And the other people that were advising him never saw it either. Sadly, he died of a heart attack. And 18 months later, that company had disappeared.
Toast.
It closed the doors, yes. People lost their jobs, it was a family business, so the daughter who was supposed to have taken over, she had never been developed. And my belief is there are kind of 3 things that prevent succession planning. Okay. One is the owner, because that owner is fearful of what the other side looks like. They don't have a plan for after they sell the business.
Right.
Their business, they've built the business, their whole identity is wrapped up in the business. And consequently, they don't plan. And I think that's what this gentleman's issue was, to be honest.
Yeah.
Looking back. Then there's the scenario of they just don't know how to start and how to drive the plan. Because you develop a plan, but then you've got to work and execute the plan. And it's an ongoing process. And then the third is they just don't have, especially in small businesses, they don't have the resources and the time commitment, which is why a lot of smaller businesses will call me in to kind of be their accountability partner. Sure. And help drive the process and make sure that people are being developed in the right period of time, et cetera.
Yeah, that is so important. Do you feel like a lot of those peeps that don't succeed with succession planning, do you think some of it's just that, are these people micromanagers? Are they afraid to let control? Is that their fear, a lot of these guys?
That is one, I don't know if it's a fear. It's more just their personality.
Gotcha.
That, they've always done it. Nobody can do it better than them.
Right.
But they'll go and hire somebody to take the reins. Okay. And then what happens is they keep sticking their nose in the president's business.
Right.
And frustrate a lot. Many of them don't last, but 18 months because the owner keeps coming back.
Right.
Yeah.
If you could create a billboard, giant billboard right there in Atlanta on one of the main little highways, and it could say anything, what would Beth Miller put on it?
Oh gosh. Develop your leaders for your future success.
I like it. Very cool. We've only got like 5 minutes here. I told you this goes fast.
I know, it does.
And there's so many cool things that I have down that I don't think we can cover in one podcast, but you bring up core competencies. Mm-hmm. And I might not phrase it the exact same way, but when we were talking, when you said we were talking about culture,
Right.
and culture is I'm a big culture guy. And you talked how your core competencies are in that.
They,
I know it's a humongous topic. We could probably talk for 50 minutes on core competencies. Can you
yeah,
tell us
so
about what that is for you though?
yeah. So core competencies are the how around you, how you get things done, not the what.
Yeah.
So for instance, it might be that the what is customer support. The how is how do you support customers? Are you empathetic? Are you a good listener? Those are competencies, all right? But if you back in, you cascade, you start at the values, company values, and there are behaviors that are going to support those values. That's how you know whether or not a value is being lived by somebody, is by what you see and how they act. All
Right.
right. So those are the competencies that you want to make sure employees have and future employees have.
Yeah, I would agree. I spent a lot of time talking about values and what appears to be like part of your core competencies. I think those things are so important. If those things are missing, I feel like none of this other stuff matters.
Well, what happens is that you have people on your team that don't fit,
Yeah.
and it becomes clear because their behaviors are not supporting your values.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of values tied to feel. And if you aren't feeling the people around you, right? I mean, empathy is a feeling.
Right.
If you're not feeling, if you don't have a good feel for the people that you're working with, and we're only as strong as the people that we surround ourselves with, those values are kind of a big deal, and the competencies are giant.
Yes. And then you cascade, once you have those competencies, then what you can do is you can build behavioral interview questions for hiring purposes so that you're hiring to those core competencies that support the values.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's gold. I think uh, me personally, I think that would be one of my paramount uh, pillars of hiring would be those core competencies. Because I would also argue that if you aren't aware of your own, or if you're not aware of the people around you, you can't make adjustments. And everyone has different personalities.
Right.
Everyone's different. You can really ride somebody and be a little more firm with one person, but another person you might have to ease along. And if
Exactly.
you don't have a feel for any of these people, how are you supposed to be able to lead?
Yeah.
So, well, hey, we are coming to a close here in a second here. Thanks I know you're busy and everyone wants a piece of Miller time in their diet. And so I really appreciate you. Could you, to our listeners out there, could you please give us the best ways to get in touch with you?
Sure. The first is through my website, which is www.executive-velocity.com. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. I take in messages, and it's Beth Armknecht Miller. That's ARMKNECHT Miller. There's only one of me.
That's the truth. Hey, we're going to end with this. You got 30 to 45 seconds to talk to our listeners. If you had 30 to 45 seconds to talk to them about this is how you can achieve the best version of themselves. How can you be your best self? You got 30 to 45 seconds.
I would say that to be your best self as a leader is to be aware of the people around you and to serve those people, to develop them, care and nurture for them, but also hold them accountable. Because people need sandboxes. They need to know where they fit, and to help connect them with the greater purpose of the company. So if I am somebody who's working in customer service, how am I impacting the greater vision of the company?
Gold. All right. Well, thank you so much, Beth.